Ho, 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 and Merry Christmas, friends. It is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, and I hope that you, like me, are enjoying the Christmas season, and I hope you have a steaming cup of hot chocolate in your hands, ready to imbibe not only another edition of Solutions Watch, but the final edition of Solutions Watch for 2025. So let's end the year on a bit of a positive note, shall we? Because there is enough doom and gloom to go around out there, but who wants to be dwelling on that during this festive Christmas season? Not I, and hopefully not you, which is why you're here watching the end of your 2025 update edition of Solutions Watch, where I hope you know by now, every year at the end of the year, I go through and look at every single episode of Solutions Watch from the previous year. See how things went, where things stand, and where we go from here. And I must admit, this is one of my joys of the year, something that I look forward to, because it certainly can get disheartening, getting beaten down by the cares of the world over the course of the year, to the point where sometimes you wonder, why am I doing this at all? Does anyone appreciate it? And this is that time of year where I get to go through some of the feedback from the past year and realize that, yes, Solutions Watch is important. Damn it, it does make a difference, and I'm glad that I'm doing it. And evidently, other people are as well. Case in point, before we get into the blow-by-blow of every single edition of Solutions Watch this year, I wanted to start out with a different piece of feedback from a previous year's edition of Solutions Watch. As you may or may not know by now, I have taken to uploading various videos from the previous 4 years to my YouTube channel, which mysteriously got revivified this year. So obviously there have been 4 years of Corbett Report material that people who only look at YouTube did not get to see. So I've been uploading flashbacks every Sunday. And not so long ago, I uploaded a flashback from 2021, a previous edition of Solutions Watch called The Bystander Effect. I hope you remember that episode of Solutions Watch. If not, go back and rewatch it. I think it's a particularly important episode that gets into some of the psychological details of not only how people react in emergencies and how they can more adequately respond to emergencies, but how we can use that knowledge to move forward as a society and to make the world a better place. And I'm not speaking out of my posterior when I say that. I am talking about some feedback that I received not so long after that flashback aired on my YouTube channel. I got this from a listener who wrote, "I watched the video on the bystander effect and applied it today. I was walking out of a store when someone ran in, grabbed a gallon of water, saying his truck was on fire and he would be back in to pay. The staff said, okay, and we all went out behind him. Everyone stood by the door watching him try to put it out. It was a small fire in the headlight. I threw my stuff in the car and hustled over to see if I could help. Everyone who had been standing by the door followed me over. He had used up all the water and there was still a small flame. One of the staff went in to get more. The owner of the truck pulled the headlight out enough that I could stick my face in there and blew out the fire. I never thought I would say that I blew out a car fire, but thanks to you, I did that today. It was a beautiful, practical application of what you taught us in that video. Thank you so much for all your wonderful work." Thank you so much for that feedback. That is such gratifying feedback to hear. I'm glad that at any rate you had recently seen that edition of Solutions Watch and had it in your mind, because as people who have seen that edition know, it is about how to react in emergencies, how to more effectively organize response to emergencies, whether they be car headlight fires or broader societal issues that we are facing. Anyway, it's good to hear there are good practical solutions that actually make a difference in people's day-to-day lives. That's why Solutions Watch exists. We are focusing on things we can do to change and affect and grow and create and make new things in this world and bring people together, rather than the hate and discord and division that the powers that shouldn't be want to sow amongst us all. So let's dive in. Let's go through every single edition of Solutions Watch from 2025. And I hope you're along for the ride. There is some really interesting feedback and really interesting updates in store for you. Let's dive right in as we hit the ground running, or should that be rolling, on January 14th of 2025 with the first edition of the year called Car Freedom. in which I talked to Eric Peters of ericpetersautos.com, epautos.com, about the concept of car freedom, which is not necessarily the first thing that comes to people's minds when they think of the concept of freedom. But Eric Peters, for those who don't know, is a very libertarian-oriented, freedom-loving car guy. He's a gearhead and knows a lot about cars, but specifically is thinking about the ways that regulations and restrictions and technological upgrades are changing our relationship to cars and the way that cars have empowered freedom in the past, but are increasingly being used to restrict that freedom. And on that very note, I've just noticed in the past couple of weeks, a couple of stories that are highly relevant to this particular domain, specifically Porsche panic in Russia as pricey status symbols forget how to car, which is an interesting article. I'll let you read to figure out what that means, but very much along these lines. Another one that I just saw, EU ban on combustion engine cars off the table, EPP's Weber says. So yes, for people who haven't heard, there was a high-ranking European Parliament member who was talking recently about how the EU ban on combustion engines that was going to take place, well, that has been, unbanned, shall we say. And apparently they're not going to go ahead with that 100% ban on combustion engines, for economic reasons, obviously. I mean, for one thing, the German automotive industry, as we know it, would be decimated at least by such a move. So maybe just for economic reasons, but whatever it is, I think I'll take it because obviously, again, for people who have listened to that edition of Solutionswatch, you will know that the concept of cars and how they are run is an incredibly important part of how we run our lives. But I wanted to give, again, some very interesting and practical and useful feedback from one of the commenters on that episode, one of the Corbett Report members, Tire Guy, very appropriately named Tire Guy, wrote this comment. This is a very good report and serves as an incentive for further action like do not comply and find an end around the spy tentacles. I have two 2013 GM sedans, and several years ago, I removed the fuse from each car that controls the OnStar devices using the fuse block diagram as a guide in the owner's manual. Very inventive. Good job, Tire Guy. Perhaps car makers are already limiting what is shown in the fuse block diagrams in new cars. If I take my mobile phone, I disconnect the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and completely shut down the phone. Some people also suggest using a Faraday bag. I would like to find the fuse and or connections for any data recording devices to disable them completely. That is the next step. And yes, that is the next step. And as other commenters in that comment thread were talking about, there are other people who are going through and itemizing exactly what each type of car is collecting, what type of data it is collecting on you. And the general piece of advice, don't link your phone up to your car because your car is now a spying device, essentially. And that is becoming more and more evident to people who are paying attention. So anyway, lots of useful information in the comments and the feedback for that episode. Thank you guys in the Corbett Report community for providing that. That is the type of helpful, practical advice that I think Solutionswatch can, and at its best does, tend to generate. But let's move on to the January 21st edition of Solutionswatch, Building International Bridges, where you will recall, I talked to Miriam Gomez about the People's Reset, specifically the People's Reset 2025 edition, which at that time was gearing up to take place in Mexico. I will note that if you go to the People's Reset website, link in the show notes, you can find that the 2026 edition is already being planned and the speakers have been announced, and you can arrange your travel and get there and participate in that event. But we talked about that event and the idea of bringing people together and just bringing people together in real life, which, as we saw during the scamdemic craziness, is no small thing. In fact, it's an integral part of human community and one that is being drummed out of us in various ways. So it's always good to connect in physical reality with other people, as you can do at things like the People's Reset. So I'd like to share this feedback from Susie Alchemist, who wrote about this episode. I've dreamt for decades that people would start thinking and saying the sort of things I am at last hearing. It's sad that it took something as damaging as the lockdown to bring this thinking out into the open, but at last people are imagining heaven on earth out loud and without religious dogma, but with love and freedom in their hearts. There is so much still to do, but we are on our way, and it is good. May the People's Reset thrive and grow. Amen to that, Susie Alchemist, and thank you for that feedback. I will just note that, of course, all of the presentations from that 2025 edition of the People's Reset are up and available on the People's Reset Odyssey channel and other social media outlets. And personally, my favorite talk of the bunch was "Do We Really Need Government?" from Etienne de la Boétie Squared, who will make a further appearance in this Solutionswatch update edition that we're running through right now. Anyway, please explore that at your leisure, but let's move on to the next edition of Solutionswatch. On January 28th, there was Low Tech, No Tech, which you will recall, again, I was talking about the concept of, well, how sometimes it's not the cutting edge, most amazing GUGAD technology that is going to save us from this digital panopticon, but some of the old, time-tested, time-honored, and very, very low-tech or even no-tech solutions that have done the job for decades or centuries or in some cases millennia. Like, for example, the lowly fax machine. I did talk about that and mention that and how it helped contribute towards the downfall of the Soviet Union, but perhaps more to the point for our purposes in the current media environment, just good old-fashioned physical print media. As a way of connecting with people in the real world with a real physical, tangible piece of paper or whatever it is that cannot be censored. And on that note, I did receive an email from Sushi, or is it Sushi or Sushi? I don't know how on earth to pronounce that, but I do appreciate this email where she wrote, "I want to thank you for getting me off my ass and getting me to start a community networking newsletter. I was inspired by your low-tech solutions watch video. I put an ad on Craigslist to start a community networking newsletter. I am amazed at the response." So yes, a very low-tech, effective solution to connecting the community to form a parallel society. Blessings. And update, that newsletter has now been launched. So yes, there is an actual community networking newsletter that exists in the world, presumably be at least spurred on by that edition of Solutions Watch. Awesome. That is great. And I would love to hear more feedback along those lines from people who have done similar things. I know, for example, Kit Knightley from Off Guardian had a recent experience that he has shared where he was looking for a lost cat, and he experienced much, much more community connection from putting up actual physical lost posters around the community than he did on Facebook or any other online networking service. So yes, sometimes connecting with people through physical media in the real world is the way to go. And oh yeah, what was the update to that? Yes, I myself have joined the physical print community with a little book you may have heard of by now called Reportage, Essays on the New World Order, audiobook version now available for download or purchase at your audiobook site of choice if you prefer something a little bit more ephemeral, but the actual physical hardcover and paperback editions, the uncensorable paper that you can hold in your hand, is of course available at booksellers everywhere. So thank you very much to all the people who have supported this work and helped to propagate it into the real world by actually purchasing a physical copy. Thank you also to all of the people who have heeded the call that I've put out a few times. If you can, please try to get Reportage in your local library. And some people have responded to that. Most heartwarmingly of all for me, the Calgary Public Library, my hometown, now has Reportage in its stocks, as well as the Auckland, New Zealand Council Libraries, Austin Library, Nakusp Public Library, Cassowary Coast Library, and doubtless others that I am either forgetting or unaware of at the moment. But again, thank you to all the people who have been doing that. That is incredibly important, as well as a way of helping to spread this word to others. Thank you also to the people who have left reviews on various sites. Whatever site you purchased your book from, it would be great if you could leave a review of the book there. That does make a difference and will help it get seen by other people. So thank you for that. And thank you also to the people who have heard and responded to the call for translations of Reportage. I very much appreciate it, and I certainly appreciate all the sort of freelance translators and people who are just volunteering their time to translate. I very much appreciate that, although at this time, I'm looking for offers from established publishers with a publishing track record to publish the translations. I'm not publishing translations myself yet, although there may be time for that in the future. But I appreciate all of the support on that. As I say, I think low-tech and no-tech solutions can be our way out of a problem that is created by some of this technology. ... Speaking of which, the very next edition of Solutionswatch on February 4th was talking about how to really resist digital ID, a subject that comes up not just once this year, as you will see, but the one that I tackled with Gabriel of the Libra Solutions Network, specifically in response to an interesting and thought-provoking post that he had up at that time called "Internet Badasses Aren't Going to Stop Digital ID," in which we talked about reintegrating yourself into your local community, using cash and local currencies, building support groups, supporting and expanding independent local businesses, understanding that digital ID is a system, not an implementation, caring about results, etc., etc. But instead of me summarizing this, why don't I turn it over to Gabriel, who kindly submitted this video update about that edition of Solutionswatch.
Hello, Corbett Report community. It's Gabriel here, and I am thrilled and honored to be giving my update. It means a great deal to me that after the episode that I spoke about resisting digital ID, I got a lot of kind people reaching out to me, and that definitely was encouraging and really did help put me in the right mindset to take action this year. And really the best piece of feedback I got off it was that I noticed somebody left a comment saying that they thought it was the most inspiring Solutionswatch ever. So I don't know. I don't think I could top that. Maybe I should just pack everything in, but that's not what I am doing. And a lot of that has required me to overcome many different things. As some of you who remember the episode will kind of notice, I have lost over 100 pounds, probably closer to 130 pounds by now since that February episode. And so things are going incredibly well. I am enjoying becoming more active, getting stronger, and really just making progress on fitness goals across the board. And I am surrounded by a lot of very kind people who really do care about these things. And so a great deal of what I've been really doing is looking and learning about the world around me and trying to figure out ways I can contribute. And really a big way that I think I can contribute and have been working on this year is my RSS reader project. I started this programming project where I would build an RSS reader because I think there are many features that currently don't exist in the ones that are available that would be game changers if actually put into practice. So this year, my RSS reader has a couple of really cool features. Even though it doesn't look pretty and it's not terribly useful yet, at least it is real. It can actually load feeds, put them in a database. That's pretty much what you would expect. It can display them. It can display the content of the articles. I've still got a lot to do as far as multimedia is concerned. The thing that excites me a lot is that as of lately, I can load feeds from the dark web. So that's either Tor or I2P. In addition to that, my reader also supports importing OPML files. OPML files are collections of RSS feeds, and the way it currently is set up is you can just send a link to an OPML file and it'll automatically import all the feeds, and then you can browse them. I have a lot of exciting ideas for this project, and I'm really looking forward to continuing on with it in the year ahead. Of course, progress has been slow because I will admit my IRL activities have certainly taken a priority, but it has been very gratifying to really take on this fight on multiple fronts by taking action in my real life, getting connected with other people, and really enmeshing myself in the world as it is, but also not abandoning my fight for cyberspace and really continuing on to put into practice what I've learned and what I think I can contribute in this space. And so thank you so much, and I really hope you all have a Merry Christmas and an excellent year ahead. There is certainly no shortage of opportunity, and I invite you to take part however you can.
Thank you for that, Gabriel. I appreciate the update, as I trust the audience does as well. Most inspiring Solutionswatch episode ever. Indeed, that is high praise indeed. So I hope people will familiarize or refamiliarize themselves with that particular episode. And I don't know about anyone else, but I am very much looking forward to seeing progress on that RSS reader. And I hope you are too. If you are interested, of course, you can follow Gabriel at the Libra Solutions Network, link in the show notes. But let's keep this train a-chugging. February 10th, the next edition of Solutionswatch was Raising Generation Next, which was a conversation between myself and Ernest Hancock of Declare Your Independence, where we were talking about the concept of raising Generation Next, i.e. educating the next generation for the world of tomorrow. And how best do we go about doing that? What is our responsibility as parents? How do we parent our children? The role of corporal punishment and other such things. How do you raise an anarchist, etc., etc. It's a very important conversation, and again, not the first and not the only time that it was raised in Solutionswatch this year. But there's a lot of feedback from a lot of different perspectives, which I do appreciate. For example, I will point out Therese, Corbett Report member Therese, who wrote, "I've posted an episode in response to a voluntarist on parenting who called my method the elephant in the womb. As a mother of 3 adult daughters, I think that parents need a system in which children learn to take responsibility. Love is unconditional, but stuff is not." And here it is. And there's a link to the Third Paradigm Substack. "My home economy, which is the etymology of the word economics, became the basis for my anarchist economic system, aka community self-governance, aka small-scale sovereignty, aka federalism. The purpose of a federal government is to protect the sovereignty of communities, and the purpose of a community government is to protect the sovereignty of the family. All people are born with bodily sovereignty, and the intentional infliction of pain is both morally wrong and ineffective at any age." And here are 2 linking the economic system to parenting, and there's a couple more links that you can, of course, explore at your leisure. An important topic. There's a lot of incredibly important things to say about it, and more of which will be said later on in this Solutionswatch update. So thank you to Therese and to all the commenters for their feedback on that ongoing and very important subject. And I suggest you take another look at that Solutionswatch if you did before, or maybe your first look if you didn't the first time, because there's a lot of important things to be said in there. But let's keep this moving. February 17th, the next edition of Solutionswatch was called Leveling Up Your Language. And it was a conversation between myself and Adam Deng of adamdeng.com, an MIT PhD student / self-proclaimed data alchemist, who I was particularly fond of this episode. It was nice. In this episode, if you didn't see it, Adam Deng asked me questions. It was a Q&A where he was asking questions to me about verbal fluency, how to improve one's fluency, how to improve one's facility with language, with reading, etc., increase one's reading comprehension, etc., etc. These were really interesting questions, and I've never quite had this type of Q&A episode before, but I quite enjoyed it. And obviously, I am very interested in the English language, let's put it that way. So it was fun to be able even for myself to start to think and articulate about some of these concepts. So I think it's a good episode for anyone who is interested in the subject. But again, why listen to me when we can listen to this update from Adam and how he has adopted and adapted some of the lessons from this Solutionswatch episode in his life over the course of the last year.
Hello, my fellow Corbetteers. I'm Adam Deng, and in February of this year, I appeared on the Solutionswatch episode, Leveling Up Your Language, Strategies for Improving Reading Comprehension and Getting More Out of Reading Words. With that being said, since then, I've read several books, and some highlights include Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, the story of how his tough upbringing enabled him to become one of the best endurance athletes. Atomic Habits by James Clear, on how to prime your environment to make your habits stick and the bad ones go away. And of course, James Corbett's own Reportage, a collection of essays on the New World Order, how it operates, and how we can defeat it in all of its forms. The biggest takeaway from that episode is that reading and words are insufficient to fully encapsulate and describe reality. So to get the most out of reading, you must come up with strategies to bridge the gap. 2 of my favorite strategies have been 1, to envision the words within an image space so that it's easier to access and connect with, and 2, to imagine that you are having a conversation with the author instead of just the author projecting words onto you, so that you can interact with and debate and analyze how those words carry weight. But I think ultimately, one important part of reading is that you actually sit down and do it. And that has historically not been easy for me. But what I've done is I've taken the time, every week I set aside time to just read. To just go in, look at the text, mark it up with a pen, do whatever I need to do so that the ideas within a book can stick. And it is this non-IQ trait of persistence that has allowed me to actually derive meaning from these books so that I can quote their lessons when I need to, so that I can think about it when I'm feeling down, and then motivate myself to get back up. You know what else requires persistence? Running. Running is something that I used to suck at. I was always in the bottom 20% of the class when it came to the mile time. But for reasons I shall not disclose right now, I became very motivated to improve my running. And in the last 6.5 months, I've ran over 700 miles. Just consistently, almost every day, going on the treadmill, going outside, improving my stamina, working on my burst speed, and I've got my mile down from 8:30 to sub 7, which I'm very happy about, and we will carry that momentum forward. The similar lesson of persistence that applies to reading also applies to running. Ultimately, I want to thank James for inviting me onto his show, and also for all of you for emailing me and having some correspondence, and some of us are still friends today, so it's great to see the community get involved. If you want to keep updated on my enterprises, then go to adamdane.com, which I have not updated in a year, but I will be doing soon. And as always, my email is ad@adamdane.com. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving, and happy holidays.
Thank you for that update, Adam. The sub 7 minute mile is no mean feat, so I appreciate the dedication that went into that and the obvious dedication that Adam has for all of the subjects that he's interested in, leveling up his language, no exception. So I hope people will follow up on some of those suggested books that he was talking about, maybe including reportage. But at any rate, I do appreciate Adam and his input. I'm looking forward to his updates to his website, which he is promising will be coming soon. And looking forward to seeing what he accomplishes in the future with his leveled up language. Again, I will direct people's attention to that episode if they are at all interested in the concept of leveling up one's language proficiency, reading, comprehension, etc. Moving right along, February 26th, the next edition of Solutionswatch was called How to Get Eggs for Free, which you may or may not recall was released during that very interesting period of time when egg prices were a headline news item. Specifically, egg price inflation is so bad that some New York City stores are selling them Lucy cigarette style, and other such things that were making the news at the time, which prompted me to make a somewhat simple observation, but hopefully not simplistic observation that, hey, did you know eggs are actually free? Nature actually produces in abundance the things that we need as human beings to survive. That is how the human species survived for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, or thousands of generations, or whatever it has been, not from the grace and goodness of government, but because the earth itself is abundant, something that unfortunately is a very, very simple piece of wisdom that we do need reminding of from time to time. So that was more or less the purpose of that edition of Solutionswatch, and hopefully you did see it, and you saw how, for example, I flashed back to a previous edition of Solutionswatch on choosing chickens, where I talked about permaculture design, etc. And again, this prompted some of the most gratifying feedback that I can receive, specifically this comment from Corbett Report member Taurus, who wrote, "I've mentioned it before, but that choosing chickens Solutionswatch literally changed the whole trajectory of my life. I enrolled and completed my permaculture design certification as well as teacher training. I now guest teach for permaculture courses and have my own organic gardening business. And we have a little mixed breed backyard chicken flock as well. Shameless plug, if you're in Colorado Springs, I sell my eggs for $6 a dozen. You can request my email from Corbett and we can meet up. Chickens are messy creatures, but provide an abundance and are quite entertaining. The biggest problem we have is that they have attracted mice around their feed, but some of the chickens are quick enough to catch and eat the vermin. They're raptors, after all. Our yard is fenced off in several directions, and we let them roam in a limited space, so the chicken doo-doo isn't everywhere." Excellent. Love to hear that, Taurus. I am so gratified to hear that an edition of Solutionswatch had that much effect on your life. And as a result of that feedback, I decided to flash back to that Choosing Chickens podcast, and I reposted it earlier this year. So I hope people will check out both that How to Get Eggs for Free podcast and the Choosing Chickens podcast. It may just change your life. You never know. The next edition of Solutions Watch was James Corbett and Friends Deliver the White Pill. And that was an all-star lineup of guests, specifically Ryan Christian, Jason Bassler, Sam Tripoli, Patrick Wood, and Naomi Wolf, all appearing in that episode to give their take on the question of what is the white pill? And specifically, for those who don't know, that entire question, that whole line of thinking was prompted, mostly from Jason Bassler and a conversation that he had with Sam Tripoli on the Free Thought Project podcast, which was the inspiration for that particular episode, but also what was swirling around online in various social media spaces at that time in March of 2025, when the Trump administration was still relatively new and there were still a lot of hopium swillers who were believing a lot of the lies, nonsense, and propaganda surrounding Make America Great Again. And if you say that anything negative whatsoever about Trump or MAGA or any of this, then you're spreading the black pill, man. That's black pill stuff. And that was being used as a pejorative in various online spaces at the time. So this was a direct counter to that. No, actually, talking about the bad things that government are doing, and more importantly, the good things that we can be doing to help build up the communities that we want, that is the white pill. And so there was, again, from 5 different perspectives, a lot of different ideas thrown out on the table in that very comprehensive episode. I really suggest that people refamiliarize themselves with that, especially now, after all of the nonsense of the Trump administration and dark MAGA and all of that garbage from the past year. I think a lot of the hopium swillers are finally listening to reality on that front. So they might be ready to hear about the actual white pill. Although I will note with some consternation that the most common feedback about that entire episode and all of the different ideas and opinions and people that were there and all of the stuff that was contributed in that episode, the most common feedback was something along the lines of making fun of the allegory itself, or talking about pills and pharmaceuticals and the analogy, which is funny because it wasn't even my analogy. It's the one that everyone else was spreading. But when people talk about the black pill, you're a black pillar. No one talks about, well, you're spreading pharma propaganda. But when you talk about the white pill, suddenly everyone gets up in arms. Oh my God, how you used a pill analogy. Anyway, I found that funny and somewhat disheartening. But anyway, I do recommend that episode for people who are interested in the subject. The next edition of Solutions Watch was called Creating Parallel Societies, and I will let you re-explore or explore that edition in your own time at your own leisure if you are so inclined, because there's a lot of very important concepts that are in there. I talked about the trade wars and parallel societies and Slab City and other such ideas, occupy the land, some very important subjects. And I got this email from Alex, who wrote, "Good work, James. Just want to mention that we've had a model parallel society/societies around us for generations in the form of the Amish. As far as I can tell, they totally get it and walk the talk. Not ideally, of course, but with a singular track record of self-reliance. As a longtime permaculture homesteader myself, still not successful in creating a close-knit community, I view the Amish as people who know, on levels difficult to articulate, the dynamics of community and most, if not all, the nuances around that." Yeah, very good observation, Alex. We are not reinventing the wheel when we're talking about this strange alien phenomenon of parallel society. They already exist. They're already functional and functioning. And there are people who are already living those lifestyles. Maybe we have something to learn from those people. And yeah, I would love to feature the Amish or something around those types of communities that are already doing this. But I don't know how to interview a Amish person without a string, a very long string and a couple of tin cans. I don't know. I'm not sure how that would work, but very good point, Alex. And thank you for bringing that up. Okay, next edition of Solutions Watch was called How to Search the Young Global Leaders Club, where I talked to John Sneisen about the Young Global Leaders, which I hope my well-informed audience knows is the World Economic Forum cabal of hand-picked up-and-comers from the globalist jet set. And we talk about some of the people who had been involved in the Young Global Leaders program over the years, Angela Merkel and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and many others besides. But we talked more specifically about younggloballeaders.club, which is a website that purports to offer a search function where you can search the list, the publicly available list of people who have been associated with the Young Global Leaders. And I go through it with John in that episode. We literally on screen search for various people and see their affiliations. I will note that at the time that I am recording this, it appears that the search function, the list itself, the search function is down at the moment. I was expecting an update from John, but unfortunately he did not get it in by the time I'm recording this. So we'll have to wait and see. I hope the site is not down altogether, but at any rate, it's down as I'm recording this. So please let me know. And if anybody has any specific feedback about any particular people that they found through that younggloballeaders.club website that they thought was of particular interest, please let me know. I'd be interested to hear about it. More importantly, please let the community know and leave it in the comment section. I'm sure everyone would be interested to hear about that. The next edition of Solutionswatch came on April 3rd, and it was called Enhancing Fertility Naturally. And again, I hope you have seen this edition of Solutionswatch, especially if you are planning on being fertile, being reproductive, but having difficulty with that. In this episode, I talked to Gavin Mounsey of recipesforreciprocity.com about a post that he made called Fertility and Reproductive Health, Enhancing Whole Foods and Naturally Occurring Compounds, where we talked about some of the natural ways to enhance fertility. Not only is the earth abundant, but it can also be your medicine cabinet. You do not need pharmaceuticals in order to enhance your fertility or deal with your internal health in a lot of different ways. And we had an extensive discussion about that. And I received this update from Gavin about this subject via email that I'd like to share with you. He writes, "The more I learn, the more I see how important regenerative gardening, creating food forests, and spending time in nature is for our health. Since writing the article on reproductive health in the spring, I've learned a lot more about how important being in natural settings, and in particular in forests, is for optimizing human reproductive health. Medicinal airborne molecules emitted by trees, especially old-growth trees, impact the human immune system and reproductive health. The potential for the longevity and health of our human family is interconnected with these ancient forests. Our destiny is woven together with the fate of the forests by the Creator in many ways. We can either use our human gifts to strengthen and add beauty to that tapestry, or we can be guided by greed and begin to unravel the fabric that that Creator had put here to support us all in unlocking our true potential and being able to start families. Each choice will have profound implications." Turns out those tree huggers may have been onto something. I updated my article with pertinent information and studies. I hope this inspires you all to get out in nature more, to breathe in all the medicine forests provide, and protect those ancient forests that are left in your local region. If you want to hear James Evan Pilato and I explore the health benefits of specific foods and recipes that often contain reproductive health enhancing ingredients, check out the Mounsey Minute, which airs on the second Wednesday of each month at MediaMonarchy.com. Also, there is a sale going on for my book, which comes with seeds for growing several reproductive health enhancing food/herbs, with wishing everyone a peaceful, joyful, and fertile holiday season. Thank you very much for that, Gavin. And he does include the link to that sale that is going on for his book. So I will include that in the show notes if you're interested in checking that out and supporting the work that Gavin is doing. At the very least, I hope you'll check out his Substack and that post that we're talking about in particular about natural ways to enhance your reproductive health. There is a lot of information and it is an encyclopedic post. So I hope people will at least check that out. Moving along, the next edition of Solutionswatch was called Calling Things by Their Right Name. And it makes the, again, simple but not simplistic observation that sometimes we are stymied by our language. If we don't have the right word to describe something, we cannot actively and effectively oppose it. And sometimes, knowing this, the powers that shouldn't be seed words into the consciousness or manipulate the meanings of words. Globalism and free trade and sustainability. I know what those things mean. They have been defined for me by the World Economic Forum or the United Nations or what have you. Well, who is defining those words for you, and how can we more consciously take the use of language into our own hands to effectively define, describe, and ultimately counteract the ill effects of the would-be rulers of humanity? Well, I have a very specific piece of feedback on this for you, and it relates to the very recent guest on CorbettReport.com, Ian Davis, who, as I hope you know by now, has recently written the very important book, The Technocratic Dark State. If you are unfamiliar with this, of course, you can watch our conversation on this that I posted up recently, and hopefully you have read the book. And if you have, then you will remember this passage from chapter 10, where Ian writes, recently, independent journalist James Corbett explained how calling things by their right name can help us break the spell of the tyrants. So, taking his advice, let's create our own neologism to describe these tyrant geeks and their soulless ambitions. We already have neocon, a shortened form of neoconservative. It's widely used to refer to those who pursue aggressive U.S. foreign policy and champion U.S. military imperialism. The Urban Dictionary has supplied us with the hyphenated term neo-nerd. It means someone who in their youth was looked down upon as a nerd, but who later in life used their nerd-like knowledge to benefit society. This dictionary of slang terms also gives us the two-word term neo-nerd, which, it says, is either someone whose technical expertise causes more problems than it resolves, or alternately, a heavy metal-obsessed social outcast gaming enthusiast. What if we combine the prefix neo, meaning new or recent or in modern form, with the noun nerd, a person who is extremely interested in one subject, especially computers, and, adopting the U.S. Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, put our newly coined word in all caps to make it conspicuous. Behold, the neo-nerd, plural, neo-nerds, ... And if you have read the book, or if you do go on to read the book, you will find that, yes, Ian applies that term to the neo-nerds from that point forward in the book. So I'm very, again, gratified to see that these ideas and concepts are propagating out into the general consciousness, because they are important. And so hats off to Ian for coining that neologism, neo-nerds. It's a much better way to refer to these would-be tyrants than techno-kings and whatever else they're calling themselves. So congratulations to Ian on his book. I hope people will read it, and thank you for that gratifying piece of feedback on that particular edition of Solutionswatch. The next edition of Solutionswatch came on April 30th, and it was a conversation between myself and Nick Bryant of EpsteinJustice.com, and oh, what a year it has been on the Epstein front. And at the time, we were talking shortly after the death of Virginia Roberts Giuffre. But we talked about more than that. We talked about Epstein Justice, what you need to know. And that is obviously an incredibly important topic, and one that Nick Bryant has a lot to say about. And Nick was kind enough to put together this sort of 3-minute sizzle reel of various things that have happened on the Epstein front over the year that Epstein Justice has been taking note of.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
Is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
You finished that December 2023 interview with a challenge to the FBI and harsh words for Republicans in Congress for not getting the Epstein files out to the public. You can see this clip.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's black book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI.
That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
All right, so you were sworn in as director more than 200 days ago. Now the Black Book is under your direct control. So why haven't you released the names of Epstein's co-conspirators in the rape and sex trafficking of young women and girls?
When victims of a crime are violated, the federal government is supposed to keep them a bridge of the adjudication of their perpetrators, and they're also able to confront their perpetrators. It's the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The feds didn't contact any of those 40 victims of Epstein's. They weren't allowed to be apprised of the adjudication or confront Epstein. And what the feds did was really dirty. They put together a non-prosecution agreement, and then they sealed it. Attorneys for some of the victims in the Palm Beach Post appealed the sealing of that document. It was ultimately adjudicated to the 11th District. appellate district. Those judges unsealed it, which shows you that not every judge is dirty in this story. What the feds did was unbelievably egregious. They gave blanket immunity to all of Epstein's co-conspirators. Now the feds are saying that there's no co-conspirators, but the feds gave blanket immunity to all of Epstein's co-conspirators.
So how will we know if this bill has been successful? We will know when there are men, rich men, in handcuffs being perp-walked to the jail. And until then, this is still a cover.
We want a congressional commission to investigate Jeffrey Epstein. And we want two things from that congressional commission. It's pretty baseline morality. We want to know why the government covered up child trafficking, and we want the perpetrators to be prosecuted. Two very simple things.
Two very simple things, but surprisingly, or should that be unsurprisingly, difficult to achieve. Well, anyway, those who are interested in that pursuit for Epstein justice can go to epsteinjustice.com to find out about Nick Bryant and his organization's various initiatives, pressure campaigns, etc. that are currently ongoing. And there are webinars and other things that you can attend to learn more about those efforts, which I suggest that you do. The next edition of Solutionswatch came on May 5th, and it was a conversation with Hakeem Anwar of Above Phone, where we talked about why aren't you using XMPP? We talked about a communication solution that is a little bit different than the one that people tend to default to, the default text messaging services that they use. We talked about the XMPP protocol and how it can be implemented for more secure conversations. And as usual, when it comes to these types of technological conversations, there are a lot of people who are not technologically inclined or interested who I think largely pass on these conversations and leave their obligatory feedback that I don't care and they see everything anyway. Okay, fair enough. But there are some people who are interested, and there was feedback from several people who said that they had just set up their first XMPP server. I would love to hear back from those people. Were those efforts fruitful? Because, of course, part of Solutionswatch is not just putting ideas on the table, but finding out whether or not they actually change anything. So I would love to hear that feedback. And people who are interested in more about that episode and some of the back and forth about XMPP and related technologies can look in through the comment thread on that edition. 81 comments, and including a lot of responses from Hakeem, who took time to answer and respond to a lot of the points and concerns that were being raised in that comment section. Moving right along, May 19th, there was an edition of Solutionswatch called The Smartening Up of Music. And I was very, very gratified to see that there was a lot of positive feedback about this conversation between myself and Vinny Caggiano. Of course, as people will know, Vinny Caggiano is not only my personal music teacher, but he is a composer, a player himself. He has studied music at music college, and he does have a lifetime of experience in the realm of music. And so it was with my great pleasure that I talked to him in that wide-ranging conversation about the ways that music can literally improve your life, improve your neurocognitive functions, amongst other things. And we talked about some of the science behind that, as well as some of the art behind that. And I'm very, very grateful that there was a lot of positive feedback on that conversation. I think people who are at all interested in music and how it can improve your life would gain something from that podcast. And I received this reply from Vinny about that podcast, where he said, "Hi, James. I'm happy to provide you with an update regarding the Smartening Up of Music podcast. In that video, among other things, we discussed that music has the ability to rewire a person's brain in a positive way. For example, merely listening to classical music produces a temporary improvement in a person's spatial and temporal reasoning. But actively performing music, especially improvised music, has been shown to increase a person's IQ level up to 3 points after a time. This is a literal smartening up by way of music studies. We also spoke of how the patterns of music appear to be embedded within the human psyche by default. If this is the case, music plays a big role in the evolvement of human intelligence. Since our podcast, I was pretty much flooded with emails. Some of these people have become steady students of mine. Others wanted to discuss certain aspects of music and theory with me. One student in particular made a huge commitment. Starting from scratch, he wanted guitar, piano, composition, and music theory lessons. Basically, he wants it all. In that video, I mentioned the importance of blues and my own theory of blues. It should be understood that I was speaking more so about Chicago-style blues, which integrated elements of jazz, just as jazz, as a whole, integrated blues. How blues is expressed in jazz is seriously sophisticated. That is what I built my blues theory upon. I was pleasantly surprised to see how many people showed interest in learning the deeper aspects of music. Perhaps when you release that video on YouTube in the future, I'll be seeing quite a few more folks showing similar interest. One thing we can all use these days is better quality music, and I hope to be a factor in helping to bring that about. Best, Vinny. Well, amen to that, Vinny. I certainly can attest to the fact that you have greatly improved my life with your music instruction. I very much appreciate it and wholeheartedly recommend anyone who is interested get in touch with Vinny. He is at vincognito.com. His contact details are there if people are interested. And yes, for people who haven't seen that episode yet, what are you doing? I will, of course, release it on the YouTube channel, which obviously was censored at the time that we had our original conversation. I haven't done so yet, but when I do, then people who only ever go to YouTube can enjoy that conversation as well. In the meantime, you can go to that super secret place called CorbettReport.com to enjoy it right now. All right, moving along, the next edition of Solutionswatch was released on May 28th, and it was a conversation between myself and Spike Cohen, who people might remember as a libertarian activist / political candidate, but also an entrepreneur. And for the purposes of this conversation, most importantly, the founder of You Are the Power, an organization devoted to fostering respect for individuals and their rights, and one that helps people fight back against out-of-control government officials. It helps charities provide for those in need, etc. And we had a conversation about You Are the Power, why and how it came to be formed, and specific cases that Spike and his organization have helped out with. And Spike was kind enough to record this update for this edition of Solutionswatch.
Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. It's been an incredible year for us at You Are the Power. In fact, the last time I was on the show, I was talking with James about the Hernandez family, who we had just helped to reunite with their children and to avoid a combined 80 years in prison. They had been wrongfully accused of abusing their kids. And we spoke about how that's happening across the country and the work that we do on that. We had also just gotten legislation passed there in the state of Georgia to help greatly reduce the number of false allegations that were happening there. Since then, it's just taken off. We've not only reunited the Hernandez family, but many others across, not just in Georgia, but across the country. And we've spoken with lawmakers in multiple states about getting legislation similar to Ridge's Law, which was what we got passed in Georgia, passed across the country. In fact, we're working on right now on a bill called Patterson's Law in Florida, which would do largely the same thing, which is make it significantly harder for false allegations of abuse to happen by informing parents of their rights and allowing them to access their kids' medical records, and also forcing the doctors who are falsely accusing them of abuse by legally attesting to the facts of the case. So we continue to work on that. We've had such amazing success in that we've actually created a program within You Are the Power that is focused solely on this kind of work. It's called the Family Reunification Program. We have teams of professionals all across the country, doctors, attorneys, former investigators and law enforcement professionals, and many other everyday people who just help us with the back-end work that's necessary to be able to reunite these families. We've become so successful that we've actually had multiple cases where just reaching out to the child protective officials that are wrongfully accusing these families of abuse and letting them know we're involved has gotten them to completely back off because they don't want the public pressure that comes from us going live and going public with their cause. And I have to thank so many of you who heard about what we're doing on the Corbett Report and got involved as a result. But we've been winning on many other causes as well. At its core, You Are the Power finds anyone who is fighting against being abused by local and statewide government officials, and we fight until we win. Earlier this year, we've had many cases that were outside of that, but still involved local government abuse. A couple examples of that: there was a family farm in New Jersey that the state was trying to take from them so they could build affordable housing on their family farm that had been in the family for nearly 200 years. We got involved. The officials backed off. There was a town in New York called Cortland who was going to pass a bill that was going to force disabled people to purchase a license to operate their wheelchairs. As I know how insane that sounds, but anyway, we got involved and they backed off within like 24 hours. That's the kind of stuff that we do every single day.
And don't leave us hanging there, Spike. I swear I did not edit that. That was the update video that Spike provided for this. I think I suggested a 3-minute video, and I think that was exactly 3 minutes. Anyway, that's how that video ends, but glad to hear about the updates and very glad to hear that You Are the Power is continuing to make a genuine difference in the world. I'm always happy to hear about such stories and help to bring them to the awareness of others. So if you haven't checked out that edition of Solutions Watch, what are you waiting for? Go and do so. Speaking of Solutions Watch that you should check out, on June 9th, I released Opting Out of Technocracy, which was a conversation that I held with Derek Brose of the Conscious Resistance, who you may or may not be familiar with. You should probably, because he's been on Solutions Watch many times besides, as well as my other interviews, and of course is doing a lot of important work, including writing books about, opting out of technocracy. He's literally written a book on that subject that we've talked about in the past. And in this conversation, we were talking about his documentary project, The Pyramid of Power, an incredibly well-produced documentary. If you haven't checked that out, it's a extensive series that works from beginner level conspiracy reality up to, the higher levels of conspiracy, the rabbit hole, I guess, as it were. And for people who are interested, Derek has provided this update about that series and about his efforts to exit and build and to opt out of technocracy.
Hey, James. Thanks for letting me come in and give a little update for the end of the year Solutions Watch. So we talked about the Pyramid of Power and specifically the episode on how to opt out of the technocratic state. As far as that goes, I'm happy to report that we are very close to the final episode. Actually, as I'm recording this, the final episode should be out any day now. It's going to be live first on this platform I partnered with called civil.com for about 5 weeks. And then in the new year, it'll be out publicly everywhere on all my channels. And of course, at thepyramidofpower.net, where all of the episodes can be found. And I'm really excited for that because it features you, it features Larkin Rose, it features Catherine Austin Fitz, G. Edward Griffin, Peter Dale Scott, Professor Richard Spence, Mark Passio, David Icke, Adam Green. I'm sure I'm forgetting other people, but lots of really great people and researchers with their own opinions about who is at the top or what is at the top of the Pyramid of Power. And I'm very excited to share that. And of course, most importantly, the solutions that we highlight at the end of that episode, which does really relate to our previous conversation about exit and build and things like that. So that'll probably be familiar to my audience and to your audience who has seen our interviews about that. And then we also talked a little bit about the community that I'm building and in the process of building, the Conscious Agora. Since we last spoke, things have progressed. We are harvesting tons and tons of avocados. Really, really awesome. I mean, way too many. I never thought I could get sick of avocados, but I have for the moment. But we have so many avocados. We are giving them away to neighbors. We're giving them away to friends. We're actually about to go to a local market and sell them. No taxes, nothing like that. Just selling them to local people who want some avocados, organic avocados, pesticide-free avocados. We are starting to build our food forest. We've just worked with an engineer to map out our land, and we're about to start designing our home sites, choosing our home sites. So within the next month or two, I should know exactly where my house and Miriam, where we're going to put our house and where we're going to build and start building our land, on our land in 2026. We're looking at things like hempcrete. We found out there's an abundance of hemp in the state we live here in Mexico. And so we're moving in that direction. And so that's all very exciting. And yeah, so we're going to continue down this exit and build journey. The Pyramid of Power is coming to a close. The solutions are going to be included in that. And I'm so excited to show people what is possible when you really embrace exit and build, not just as an abstract idea, but when you actually live it and show other people by example. So thank you, James, for all the work you do. And thanks for giving me a chance to share this.
Thank you for the update, Derek. And I think it will come as a surprise to no one in the audience that Derek is continuing to pursue his various pursuits in search for greater freedom. So I am very much looking forward to the exit and build updates that will no doubt be coming in the new year as the conscious agora begins to take shape. I'm sure you guys will be along for the ride on that as well. So people, of course, can keep up with Derek on his various outlets, the Conscious Resistance Network website, and others besides. But let's move on to the next edition of Solutionswatch, which came on July 2nd of this year. And if you are the type of person who has the twin proclivities of being very interested in the events of 9/11 and being a complete research nerd, then boy, is this edition of Solutionswatch for you. It's called The 9/11 Timeline, and it is a conversation with Ted Walter of the International Center for 9/11 Justice about the IC 911's revivification, easy for me to say, of the History Commons Complete 9/11 Timeline. If you don't know what the History Commons Complete 9/11 Timeline is, boy, have you been out of the loop. It is by far the most important single research tool in the history of 9/11 truth. And it provided for many years an invaluable resource for researchers on just about any 9/11 related topic you can imagine, and drilling down with a very simple, very descriptive description of that event or that particular thing that happened, and the links to the exact resources, the exact articles, etc., that it comes from. It was such an incredibly valuable tool, and I'm using the past tense because, as anyone who is familiar with the History Commons Complete 9/11 Timeline will unfortunately know, it did go offline several years ago. It was, they did not maintain their servers. It got dropped. And suddenly there's this big gaping hole. Well, IC 911 came in to fill that hole, and thank God that they did. The Complete 9/11 Timeline is back. And boy, is it still as useful as it has ever been. I hope people out there who are interested in genuine 9/11 research will have explored that resource by now. But again, why should I overtalk this when Ted Walter is here to provide an update on that particular edition of Solutionswatch?
Hi there. My name is Ted Walter. I'm the Executive Director of the International Center for 9/11 Justice, and that's my cat Nina behind me. Earlier this year, I went on Solutionswatch with James to talk about the Complete 9/11 Timeline, which our organization had just republished after several years of that resource being offline. For those of you who don't know, the Complete 9/11 Timeline was a searchable database of thousands of news reports, government documents, and other types of information that chronicled all of the events, or many of the events, that took place before, during, and after September 11, 2001. And each entry contained a concise, fairly neutral summary of a particular event that took place in relation to 9/11, along with the sources for that information. And you could use those entries in that database to research a particular topic and get a much better understanding of what really happened on 9/11, what was hidden below the surface of the official narrative. That resource went down for some years, the mid-2010s, and the creators of it, the History Commons, asked us if we would be able to inherit and resurrect that resource, and we were honored to do so. And so you can find that now on ic911.org. James asked me, do we have any updates about it? We haven't received a lot of feedback, but I'm very pleased to say that it is actually the most visited page on our website since July of this year when it was relaunched. And I was prompted or inspired by James's question to put a question or a sentence up on the page, encouraging people to contact us and let us know if they find the database useful for researching anything in particular. In a similar vein, we are now working on something that we're calling the 9/11 Data Archive, which is essentially going to be a catalog or database of thousands of documents related to 9/11, original source documents, and other types of information. This was on our agenda since we relaunched as an organization 2.5 years ago in June of 2023. And we now have the opportunity to do it because it is being done as part of a larger project, which is a report for U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. As many of you may know, Senator Johnson was on James's show earlier this year, and he also spoke at the Turning the Tide conference in September in Washington, D.C., and he has asked researchers in the 9/11 Truth Movement to prepare a report that will hopefully be presented at one or more hearings of his committee, the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, next year around the 25th anniversary. And so this is a really remarkable development that even if you told me a year or two ago that this might happen, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are, and here we are building this new resource, the 9/11 Data Archive, along with it. And so I think all of this is a testament to perseverance and persistence, and that's what we've seen over the last 20 plus years in the 9/11 research community, is activists and researchers refusing to give up, refusing to let this issue go away. And as a result of our hard work and dedication, it's starting to pay off. And so thank you very much. I wish everybody a very happy Christmas and happy New Year. And let's hope that 2026 is a big year for 9/11 truth.
Thank you for that update, Ted. And it is great to hear about the forthcoming 9/11 Data Archive, sorely needed resource. And as there is so much research that's spread out over so many different websites and archives, including, unfortunately, much to my chagrin, Scribd, which is a terrible website and shouldn't exist. But unfortunately, a lot of 9/11 Commission interview notes and research notes are on Scribd. So anything that can save it from that particular rabbit hole of the internet would be great. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'm very, very grateful to hear about this report that is being prepared for potential submission in front of the subcommittee about that. That, again, is an incredible development in 9/11 truth that has happened this year. Probably one of the most significant developments that's happened in the last 25 years. Although if you talk to some of the 9/11 truth community, I don't know, for some reason they think it's probably the worst thing that's ever happened. Anyway, I'm very much looking forward to, at the very least, that report itself and whatever may or may not come from it. I think it is to the good to be collecting this information and data in such a way. So hats off to Ted Walter for doing that. IC911.org doing important research and collecting data as always. So I hope people are supporting their efforts as they do so. You know, I think I need to refresh my hot chocolate, but we're only halfway through the year, folks, if you can believe it. But here we go. Let's keep going. July 16th, I released an episode of Solutionswatch called "The Met Office is Scared of Ray Sanders." And hopefully you did see that interview and you know about Ray Sanders and his heroic efforts to basically call the UK Met Office out on their fabricated weather data and their stations that don't exist and other such things. Again, it's an incredible story, so I hope you did see that. But I did get this email update from Ray, who writes, "I almost thought the Met Office is scared of Ray Sanders was a bit over the top when you and I last spoke. But subsequent events have proved you were correct in your assessment. Up until then, the Met Office had covertly amended one of their sites, deleted just one dataset, tried to debunk my claims via a third party, and deemed me vexatious. My questions met with refusals to answer. Small beer for what was to come. Since then, things have really taken off. I question their data, they delete it, or more likely simply hide it from public viewing. The non-existent historic sites reporting current monthly data I focused on have now all vanished. Where I have queried climate averages data for 30-year periods at sites before they were even installed, notably Charlwood, aka Gatwick Airport, the UK's second busiest, they've now simply erased the phony numbers from view. The Met Office has taken to rewriting the history of places they had already artificially written into the record books in the first place. My recent exposures over inbuilt flaws to their temperature measurement protocols have led to their newly appointed Associate Director, Communication and Engagement, Tabitha Aldrich Smith, to issue office against me. But I'm not going away. The Surface Stations Project will report its full findings in 2026. Excellent. P.S. A recent example of the Met Office output, and he provides a link to why tackling disinformation matters more than ever at the Met Office from November 2025. As I said, as that episode was titled, the Met Office is scared of Ray Sanders, or even more importantly, of the Surface Station Project, and the fact that people like yourselves out in the audience are supporting people like Ray Sanders and other researchers who are trying to get to the bottom of this monumental civilization level hoax that is ongoing right now and being exposed in front of our very eyes latest update on that, which actually just came in after Ray Sanders sent in that email update, I will note his latest post, Valence's Vanishing Act, official response to StationGate, which notes that the UK government's Minister of State for Science, Innovation, Research and Nuclear has finally replied to concerns about Met Office station closures, poor siting, and mysterious data archiving. Spoiler, no admissions, plenty of assurances, and an invitation to submit more evidence. Classic. Anyway, please do read through that, and please keep your eye on the Tall Bloke blog and on Ray Sanders' work generally as he continues on with this surface stations project. It's interestinger and interestinger. But we keep plowing ahead, and now we are at July 30th, which is the date that I released How to Leave the Cage, an edition of Solutionswatch, in which I talked to previous Solutionswatch guest, Etienne de la Boétie Squared, about his recent book on To See the Cage is to Leave It, talking about the 25 techniques of control that are used by would-be planners of society and how to demystify them. And again, a popular conversation with a lot of good feedback. And let's hear from Etienne himself about the latest regarding that book.
Hey, Corbett Report, it's Etienne de la Boétie. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas from Memphis, Tennessee, the home of Elvis Presley, Federal Express, Grok, and the Art of Liberty Foundation. After we appeared on Corbett Report Solutionswatch for our book, To See the Cage is to Leave It, 25 Techniques the Few Use to Control the Many, we were overwhelmed by orders from over 20 plus countries. Even more exciting, we had Corbettiers contact us from around the world offering to translate the book into various languages. I'm excited to announce that we will soon have translations available in French, German, Spanish, and Greek. Another fun fact, over 10% of the books we sell are sold as either 5 or 10 copy Friends bundles. It's one of those unique titles that people are buying in bulk for their friends, their relatives, their colleagues. They're donating them to libraries. They're putting them in little mini libraries in neighborhoods. They're making them coffee table books on Airbnbs. They're leaving them in Ubers. And in the coming month, in the next month, we will have our 5 and 10 pack Friends bundles and our Liberators for the first time going into Amazon.com, which will lower the cost of acquiring and distributing copies of our books exposing the illegitimacy and the criminality of government. Even more exciting, or just as exciting, is a Art of Liberty supporter from Western North Carolina gave us our largest Friends bundle order ever and is buying $2,000 worth of various Art of Liberty publications exposing the illegitimacy of government and the criminality of government and the poverty of the police exposing or persecuting victimless crimes, and is going to be doing a mailing to over 40 plus sheriffs and VIPs in Western North Carolina. She also is donating $2,000 to help us reboot our Thick Red Line project so that other people will be able to get copies to their local sheriff or police chief or deputy or officer. We've got a lot going on in 2026, and you can find out all about it on our brand new shiny website at artofliberty.org.
Thank you for the update, Etienne. It is gratifying, as always, to hear about the interest and support from the Solutionswatch community for work like that. So, of course, people who are interested in that can get more information and follow Etienne's work more broadly at theartofliberty.org. The link will be in the show notes, as usual. But let's move on to the next edition. August 6th edition of Solutionswatch was about how to set up an email alias. And you might recall that this was a timely, teachable moment directly after the data leak incident that occurred this past summer after a faulty GiveWP plugin update inadvertently, ended up exposing the email addresses of some unknown number, some tens of thousands hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of email addresses to spammers because of a faulty plugin update. And I was bewildered, befuddled, absolutely gobsmacked to note how few outlets even picked up on that or even talked about it. There was just a handful that even noted that that had taken place, but it did take place, and I know because, of course, it affected the Corbett Report as well. And obviously, I talked about that at length at the time and had a follow-up Solutionswatch episode. Again, let's not just dwell on what is happening to us as victims, but what we can do to change our lives so it does not affect us in the future. And this is one of those incredibly simple 2-second sort of ideas that can have a profound effect on your online privacy, and that is setting up an email alias. Again, for people who do not know, it's just the concept of having different email addresses that all connect to your email inbox behind the scenes, but no one website. Do not give any website your actual email address. You give them the alias. And there, if your email address gets compromised or leaked out somehow, well, then you just cut off that email alias and you don't get any spam related to it. So again, a very simple idea and a simple procedure that can be as complicated or not as you make it. And that was presented to us by Hakeem Anwar of Above Agency. And we talked through that and how to set up an email alias, etc. It was presented in as straightforward a method as possible. And there was, as always with these technological episodes, there was the whole gamut of tech nerds down to absolute technophiles and, technophobes, I should say. So, for example, we had this from Bilderberg CEO, who wrote, "The best and most fun solution is to buy a domain and host your own website with email. You can even host it on a computer at home. It's really not that hard." Well, okay. I don't know how much I'm going to trust Bilderberg CEO, but, he may have a point about that. However, on the other end of the spectrum, Danny J wrote, "This sounds important. I sure wish I could understand and follow exactly what/how to proceed. It's too techno for me." Fair enough. And Duck helpfully replied to that to say, if it's too technical, just one, create a bunch of accounts of free email providers. Never out your IRL name on one. Never put your in real life name on one. Number 2, write your login and password down, since you'll have a few, and if you lose them, you are SOL. And 3, only use one email per website when you sign up to them. So all that you get in that email box is from one site. Spam is easy to spot since you shouldn't get anything else. This chap's demo was pretty good in that you didn't need to sign in to lots of accounts. It's not vital to do that, though. All right. Again, I hope people have implemented that, and I would love to hear feedback from people who have started doing that. I know there were a number of Corbett Report members who started doing that after that episode, and I'm glad to see it. So let me know how that's been working out for you in the meantime. But let's move on to the next edition of Solutionswatch. It came out on September 24th, and it was called Escaping the Madhouse. And it was, of course, a follow-up to my recently released documentary on Descent into Madness. I hope you have seen the Descent into Madness documentary. Again, it was 2 years of work, mostly video editing work for video editor extraordinaire Brock West, but an incredibly important presentation on an incredibly important subject. So you can, of course, check out that documentary on corbettreport.com/madness. But after having watched that and having been hopefully empowered and inspired by the ending of that documentary, you'd want to know more about ways that you can take your own mind under control. And, well, there's a lot to be said about that, which I say in the Escaping the Madhouse edition of Solutionswatch, where you can see I go through several previous conversations, interviews, podcasts that I've had on the psychology subject over the years. And I'd like to share this feedback on that from Truthseeker, who wrote, "This episode really hit the spot. I did not realize that James has put out so much material on psychology. After reading Michael Nels's book, The Indoctrinated Brain, How to Successfully Fend Off the Global Attack on Your Mental Freedom, I've become aware of people being manipulated by these devices, which they have with them at all times. Most of the people I run across think that they have to type a new address into their smartphone or they will get lost. I think they are already lost, but I tend to keep my thoughts to myself. I often get accused of sounding condescending, but the cold, hard truth is not often taken well unless it is specifically asked for. I haven't yet seen Descent into Madness, not Descent into Madness, and I hope you have seen it by now, Truth Seeker. Let me know. However, that is my next task. I will likely use the New World Next Week link in the show notes above to purchase the download after that. If we can educate 3% of the masses on how to break the mold of being used as manipulated morons for the oligarchs, we may have acquired what we need to bring down the House of Delusions. John Adams has been quoted as saying that it did not require a majority to bring down the British rule, but only a small minority of about 3% of dedicated acting participants. Thank you for that feedback, Truth Seeker. And yes, indeed, it's precisely because many people, most people, do not know that I've done so much work on this subject or that subject, like psychology, that I have taken it upon myself to put these together into course curricula and started opensourceeducation.online so that you can find my history course, my psychology course, my economics course, my literature course, etc. They are all there, 100% completely free, freely available, just a compilation of various reports I've done on these subjects. Of course, you can purchase the downloads from the New World Next Week store, and I do appreciate that support. But anyway, I hope people are using that as a resource, hopefully to familiarize themselves with the material that I have in the archives, and then hopefully as a tool for spreading to others in a less conspiracy weirdo kind of way. It's opensourceeducation.online. It's an educational institution, I'll have you know. All right, next is October 1st, the release of The Lost Art of Yes and edition of Solutionswatch, in which I talked about the Yes and improv game and how it can be used to, well, make for more fruitful conversations with people you may partially agree with and partially disagree with, or want to educate in more depth on various subjects. And one thing that I was surprised about was how few people had apparently even heard of this Yes and game. For example, Eliz Anti-Panic writes, I logged in so I could say how much I loved this episode, one of my favorites. I never heard of the Yes and game. It's a good one for me because I frequently find myself saying no, but... Well, good. I'm very glad to have introduced at least this concept to a lot of people and hopefully gotten the gears turning onto, how can I make for more fruitful, more productive conversations where I can more effectively get people to see my point of view. If I have at least spurred people in that direction, then mission accomplished. Although I will note that I have also received some feedback on this episode, some that I have to question whether it's being offered in good faith or not, maybe bad faith, but at any rate, people who seem to think that this episode and my buckle up folks, you're about to see the mother of all gaslighting operations article were somehow about trying to personally convince Tucker Carlson of this or that thing about 9/11 or something like that. That is so far from the mark of what I was attempting to articulate in this episode and in that article that I can't believe that's a good faith reading of what I'm doing. Anyway, in case it needs to be spelled out for anyone, no, this is about talking to the millions and millions of people who watch Tucker Carlson and who maybe for the first time are seeing it socially acceptable to start asking questions about 9/11. Yes, there are lots of good questions about 9/11, and let me fill you in about this other thing that Tucker Carlson didn't tell you about. I think it's a great and productive way to open that conversation. So anyone who's saying that you shouldn't be talking to these people is probably trying to prevent you from spreading 9/11 truth for some reason. I'll let you come to your own conclusions about that. But the next edition of Solutionswatch was called Self-Publishing. And exactly as it says on the tin, it was about the concept of self-publishing, as in not going cap in hand to some big name publisher. Penguin Random House, please publish my book. But taking it upon yourself to start the publishing process. And that it could be, obviously, it's not, hey presto, simple, but it's simpler than you might expect and can be quite an effective way to get your voice heard. As we've talked about before, low tech, no tech, using print media to circumvent online censorship could definitely be a valuable tool. And in that conversation, I was talking to Tom Oliver Regenauer of Regenauer Press, of course, the publishers of the German edition of Reportage. I hope you have your copy. And if not, buy one for your German-speaking friend. But here is an update from Tom Oliver Regenauer about that self-publishing episode.
Hey, James. Thanks again for inviting me to Solutionswatch. Our conversation thankfully received a lot of positive feedback and directly inspired several people to take action. Just a few days after the broadcast, I had a video call with two authors who had further questions on the topic because they wanted to publish their own book or a translation of another. And since I've been advocating for years to avoid middlemen from the corporate world, promoting the concept of self-publishing both music and literature, our conversation really helped to further amplify the approach, even though the idea itself isn't really new, of course. However, thanks to the bureaucratic monstrosity in Brussels, censorship is on the rise, especially in Europe, and now not only tweets and social media posts, but also magazines, books, and satire are being criminalized. Therefore, we urgently need more analog media, more uncensorable publications, posters, flyers, more leaflets, more CDs and vinyl records and whatnot. And new direct distribution channels that ensure these products actually reach customers without the digital financial complex and platform economy profiting from them or suppressing them. Because as a critical author or artist, you can't expect any support from that side anyway, even if you have the next bestseller or hit record at hand. And the best example for the success of self-publishing is your book Reportage. After you and I agreed to do it, we translated the book ourselves, we redesigned the cover ourselves, all the advertising was done through my own channels, and the distribution was handled by a bookseller we know personally and who still takes his job seriously. So this resulted in selling well over 1,000 copies in just the first few weeks, which is really good for an author that many people in German-speaking countries don't even know yet. Just like the very positive feedback I got from people that already read the book. Therefore, I can only reiterate it's high time to take action and focus on solutions, just what you are doing with that series. Go ahead and write, translate, produce, print, publish, distribute, and reclaim the analog world, because the digital world is already a mess and it's getting worse with EID and age verification processes rolling out worldwide and rapidly. We need more independent publishers, record labels, distributors, event organizers, and today's technology and tools actually allow everyone to do that.
Thank you to Tom Oliver Regenauer for that update, and thank you for the positive, hopeful message there and putting the emphasis on the right syllable. Absolutely. Yes. The technology now exists for us to do these things, at least for the time being, at least while we can. We should be doing these things rather than simply having endless conversations about how they, them, those are censoring us. Well, let's start putting this material out there in less censorable ways. And so my hat's off to Tom Oliver Regenauer for Regenauer Press and what he's doing there, and for helping to sell the Reportage book in the German speaking language. I very much appreciate that, but hats off to everyone out there who is doing this in the various ways that they're doing it. I very much appreciate those types of efforts. So let's move on to the next edition of Solutions Watch, which came out on October 30th. Happy Halloween, almost. And for people who don't remember, that was the Thorium Solution edition of Solutions Watch, where I talked to John Kutch of the Thorium Energy Alliance about thorium. And if you don't know, thorium is a key component in superior optical coatings, alloys, organoactinide catalysis, and other difficult to say things, as well as a little thing called molten salt nuclear reactors. And speak of the devil, there's news about that coming out on a daily basis now. This most recently, just this month, China successfully operates world's first thorium molten salt reactor. So again, there are some big things happening on the thorium front. And I know that that episode was well received by a number of people. And I know that because I received some of that feedback personally. For example, as you may or may not know, I had a recent subscriber exclusive video talking to my English language publisher, Timothy Lacey, about the publication of Reportage and next steps. And we announced the upcoming audiobook, which is now available at reportagebook.com. Available right now if you are so interested. And we talked about a number of things in that conversation, but he started off right off the bat by noting that this particular episode of Solutions Watch.
Thank you very much, James. It's great to be back. Before we dive in, I just wanted to do a little bit of shameless bottom kissing. I watched I was listening to your podcast the other day. I load up my phone before I go out in the car. I'm in New Mexico now, so everything's far away. I've got to drive. And and it was the Solutionswatch about thorium, following up after, what was it, 10 years, 12 years with John Kutch. And I'm just blown away. It's like you just pull these things, out of, not out of nowhere. I know you work very hard on this, but it's like, this is fantastic. This is just fantastic radio. I didn't watch it because I was driving, but I was listening to it. And then I was thinking about, what about these miniaturized nuclear reactors that are in the Russian, ordnance now? How about, and here I am driving a Subaru, what about a miniaturized thorium reactor in a car you can drive forever? It just, your whole thing made it look possible. And that's what's so cool about the Corbett Report and all the little, the series that you make, and they evolve and everything. It's just really fantastic. And it just made me feel like, I'm a fan in that regard,
Well, thank you to Tim for that feedback. I'm blushing like a maiden hearing such kind words, but I know it isn't about me. It is about this material and what is being presented. So if people are interested in that full conversation with Tim, of course, they can go to my recent article on Flop 30, Is the Climate Hoax Finally Over?, which includes that particular subscriber exclusive video. Link will be in the show notes. But again, why listen to me or Tim or anyone else talk about this episode when we can get the update directly from John Kutch?
Hey there, this is John Kutch from the Thorium Energy Alliance, wishing you a happy, Merry Christmas for 2025. We hope that 2026 is going to be fantastic for everybody watching this. A little tiny momentary update. The only thing that matters to us right now is getting our license so that we can open up our thorium products facility where we make thorium, a little bit of uranium, and a little bit of fluorine for the integrated circuit business. There's not going to be any integrated circuits if we don't have fluorine in this country. There won't be any rare earths or rare earth magnets. That's for sure if we don't take care of the thorium. And we have plenty of resources for you to check up why thorium and uranium and rare earths are always found together in phosphate minerals. But we have the solution. We're building the thorium products facility right now, and we're doing that simultaneously while trying to get a license. So December 22nd, we are going to be in hopefully the final pre-audit for a license. But if that doesn't go well, we're going to have to really struggle to get this resolved quickly. We have hope. Some folks these days are getting their licenses in as little as 6 months. I think we have an excellent license submission and an excellent plan for everything from radiation, health, safety, and all sorts of other aspects of processing naturally occurring radioactive materials. And if you're watching this, you have to hope that we're successful, and you have to fight for us to get that license, because even if you don't care about thorium, you have to care about rare earths, you have to care about integrated circuits, and you have to care that America stays in this fight. So that's our great hope for the new year. We're optimistic it's going to happen, but stay tuned here and check out the Thorium Energy Alliance website, thoriumenergyalliance.com, and thoriumenergyalliance.org. Our YouTube channel, Thorium Energy Alliance. If you really want to help us out, maybe buy a t-shirt, a thorium t-shirt for somebody for this Christmas, because we're doing this as a group. We don't have big corporate backers. We have funders and financiers and membership that want to see this happen. It'll be great for America. It'll be great for humanity, so that we can have rare earths, thorium, and abundance and opportunity and optimism, and everything great that could come from this is going to come from this in 2026. So thanks for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you for that, John, and Merry Christmas back at you. I appreciate that, and I certainly hope that 2026 is as abundant and empowering as you promised there. And let this be a lesson to you all out there. I hope you manage to find someone who loves you as much as John Kutch loves thorium. All right, the next edition of Solutions Watch was on November 5th. The only real solution to digital ID, and I am once again gratified to note that that particular edition of Solutions Watch got quite a bit of traction, and deservedly so, on one of the important topics of our era, no doubt. And specifically in that edition, as you hopefully recall, I was talking to Hakeem Anwar of AbovePhone.com about Life Under Digital ID, a global analysis with solutions, a detailed report from the above agency that talks about digital ID, how it is being implemented in country after country, specific details, but also more importantly, and more to the point of Solutions Watch, what can be done about it. There was a lot of interesting commentary and feedback on that, and I will point people, for example, to this exchange between a commenter, a Corbett Report member, Gilbert, and Hakeem in the comment section of this episode, where Gilbert writes, "Hello, James. I finally signed up, although I should have years ago. Thank you very much. In your story, Hakeem mentions that Brazil is setting up a blockchain to track its peasants. I see this term tossed around endlessly. Blockchain this, blockchain that. Why would any government bother using a blockchain? Governments seek to centralize power. So why would they go through all the expense and the effort to decentralize by using miners? And how are the miners rewarded? Thank you for all you do." And Hakeem responded to that. "Blockchains or distributed ledgers are useful as public historical records that can't be changed, like a public audit trail, which makes sense to use in a data exchange context. B-Cadastros runs on Hyperledge Fabric, which is a permissioned blockchain. This means you need an invite. It's not public or open like most cryptocurrencies. So they have the benefit of keeping people's information and life events publicly on record, and only the consortium, authorized organizations, can add onto the blockchain." And Gilbert responded, "Right, so there are no miners, so it's not a traditional blockchain. And this confuses people because people associate the BTC blockchain with the tyranny that governments are trying to foist onto we the people. Since governments are criminal organizations, why would they ever use an immutable blockchain? Governments are thieves, and the last thing they want is an immutable ledger with a permanent historical record of their crimes. Plus, governments are all about changing history on the fly. This is impossible with something that's immutable. What advantage do criminals have in running a blockchain over a data center / spreadsheet or something like that? Well, maybe they do want an actual, factual, real, immutable record for themselves behind the scenes, is what I might reply to that. But at any rate, I'm glad that this exchange happened, and others besides, as before, Hakeem was in the comments answering people's questions and responding to comments. So good to see that back and forth, and opportunities for further learning and knowledge after that edition of Solutions Watch. The next edition was on November 18th. It was called Spoil the Vote, and it was about, well, it took as its genesis that interesting event that happened in the Irish presidential selection recently, where there was a large number, a overwhelmingly record-setting large number of spoiled votes in that selection because people were upset about the phony, fake engineered choice that they were being proffered for that selection. And so I took that as the starting point and elaborated on that concept from there. So I hope you have seen that episode. But that generated this very thoughtful, maybe Solutions Watch comment of the year from Mo, who wrote a treatise on that episode. Mo writes, "Yes, and what we see is that the greatest vulnerability of power systems is not violence. It's mass administrative noncompliance, information refusal and information dropout, psychological delegitimization, unconscious solidarity between citizens. This is what the voting in Ireland is. Or, in their own terms, loss of narrative authority plus behavioral non-cooperation. That is the true Achilles heel of any system. And if you look at the research on civil disobedience, you realize something uncomfortable. Unconscious solidarity is both the strongest force and the weakest link. It has been deliberately targeted repeatedly through psyops, narrative shaping, and social engineering strategies. Why? Because it is the cheapest and most effective method to prevent collective action. And this is exactly what the major research lines have been documenting for decades, each in their own way, but all pointing to the same structural weakness." 1 Chenoweth and Stefan, 2011, 2020 updates. Nonviolent disobedience is 2 to 3 times more effective than violent uprising. It works because mass participation lowers risk, costs for the system skyrocket, loyalty shifts happen faster, the system cannot stop thousands of micro acts of non-cooperation. 2, Gene Sharp, 198 methods of non-cooperation. Sharp, but the CIA and others have co-opted his writings, so he can't be right. Sharp showed that regimes collapse when citizens combine nonviolent non-compliance, symbolic disruption, art, ritual, silence, parallel structures, alternative information, and culture. 3, James C. Scott, Weapons of the Weak. Disobedience hides in daily microacts, invisible sabotage, rhythmic delays, selective rule following, feigned compliance. The system believes everything is normal while it's being hollowed out. 4, Chenoweth's 3.5% rule. When only 3.5% actively refuse to cooperate, the system becomes unsustainable. 5, psychological reactance. People resist when autonomy or dignity is violated, when rules lose legitimacy, when logic collapses. And here is the part no one dares to say openly. Collective disobedience is amplified by mirror neurons and social permission. I see you doing it, so I can do it too. But with AI now operating as the counterforce, those natural human mechanisms can be disrupted faster than ever before. So yes, and unconscious solidarity has become the last line of defense for human dignity, which raises the real question. If the social fabric of trust has been fundamentally damaged, is humanity lost? Or is this a hinge point? What do we, the 99%, need from each other to give each other trust and unconscious solidarity? Do they know CBDC/basic income on their terms? And gee, I hope there are a few clear-minded people on our side who can still turn the ship, because if the trajectory remains in their hands, humanity is lost. Thank you again for that comment, Mo. Probably, as I say, comment of the year. Incredible. Lots of, there's research and facts in there for people to jump upon and start researching themselves. There's a lot of provocative things that are said there. A lot of very important things that are said in that comment that even in and of itself, I could think of 2 or 3 more Solutions Watch episodes that could stem from various points that are raised in this particular post. And as an extra bonus, I see what you did there, starting the post with yes and reiterating that again towards the end. So very, very good. Thank you for that participation. Moving along to November 26th edition of Solutions Watch called Decoding Your Teen, where you will recall I talked to Lainey Liberty about her book on the subject and about more generally how to how to understand a teenager so that you can partner with them effectively in their life and hopefully become that role model that will set a good example and be someone that they strive to be. I think that would be a good thing anyway. That conversation went deep into that territory, which, of course, a lot of people have a lot of mental blocks around because I was raised this way and that's the only way to be raised. Well, I think there needs to be, and from some of the feedback that I've seen on that episode, I think there needs to be a lot more discussion of this topic because it is really, truly the fundamental topic for people who are interested in collapsing the phony, false authority of the state and raising free human beings and helping to nurture and partner and understand teenagers, whether they are becoming free human beings or whether they choose to be statists or whatever the case may be. Anyway, there's a lot more to be said. I will just note, unfortunately, it seems to be the case. I am racking my brain. I am not sure. I can count on one hand the number of times I have ever received commentary or feedback on the appearance or the dress of various male interview guests that I've done over the years, the many, many hundreds or thousands of people I've talked to. But I am struggling to think of a single time I have talked to a woman where there have not been a number of comments where the primary comment is about the way that woman is dressed or the way she looks or talks. So that's just a sad thing to note. Hopefully less of that in the future, more about the ideas themselves. But let's move on to the next edition of Solutions Watch, which came out on December 2nd and was called A Must-See Video. And as I hope you saw, it was the simplest, shortest, sweetest edition of Solutions Watch of the year. It was about 2 minutes long, and all I was doing was encouraging people to watch The Philosophy of Liberty, a video that, as I say, I had first encountered 20 years ago, and it was 20 plus years old. And where did it come from? Well, who cares? Just watch it. If you like it, spread it. And I'm glad to see the most gratifying feedback I can get, to see that 25,000 plus views of that video have now amassed in the past couple of weeks, 25,000 more than what it had when I first linked it, specifically that one particular version that I linked up in the show notes. There are many, many, many versions of that. For people who don't like the music, there are ones without music. For people who don't like the narration, there are ones with no narration. There are ones that are completely silent if you want, or you could turn the sound off if you want, etc. It comes in every permutation. So I hope that people have found one of those that they like and have spread it around to others, because I think, again, it is an incredibly powerful and effective tool. I've just spent more time just describing it than you would spend looking it up and starting in on it. So I hope you have done so. And if so, you might want to follow up with an interview that I conducted with Ernie Hancock of Ken Schooland, who is actually the person who was the basis for that video, the person who wrote the text and from which that video sprang. So a fascinating conversation. I will have hopefully more conversations with Ken in the future, but people can, tide themselves over with that conversation for now. And then finally, I guess what ended up being the penultimate edition of Solutions Watch for 2025, how and why to switch to Linux, where I talked to Rob Braxman about a topic that is on many, 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 many people's minds right now as they are encountering and dealing with the Windows 11 nonsense and the Copilot garbage that they're trying to shove down people's throats, and Windows recall and all this crazy, crappy AI spying invasive technology that people who are still clinging on to Microsoft for some reason are being force-fed at this point. Well, there are ways to get around that, and one of them is absolutely completely free, and you could do it today. It's called Linux. And so we talked about that, and it was not a step-by-step guide of how to do that. If you are interested in such a step-by-step guide, Rob Braxman has videos with that information. But we did have some conversation about the reasons and the ways that people can go about switching to Linux. And there was, as usual, as I say, with all of these tech episodes, there's the whole gamut of people who are completely and totally technophobes who don't know anything, and people who are absolutely techno wizards who are running their own servers and everything. So there's always a range of commentary and feedback. For example, we had some success stories and positive feedback. Paul823 writes, nice, have been on Kubuntu for just over 12 months now. The only time I went back into Windows was to de-Google my phone, smiley face. Go1984 wrote, I switched to Linux right before the scamdemic, and it is my daily driver. I have a dual boot laptop because some specific programs I need are not available for Linux. Best choice I ever made. Try Linux Mint, and the learning curve from Windows is non-existent. Highly recommended. But on the other side, some people have problems. Danny J, for example. Was that the same Danny J that I was quoting earlier? I think from the previous Solutions Watch. I watched all this and understand nothing. My life experience is that there is always a catch somewhere. Guess I'm stuck with the rest of the techno-ignorant sheep waiting to be sheared and then be on our owner's dinner plate. Why haven't any of the techno smarty pants people invited a no-brainer option to switch? I'd pay for it. Well, I have some good news for you, Danny J. If you are interested in just such a solution, I have a video you should be watching. It's called Making Privacy Simple with Above, Linux Without the Learning Curve. And it is Hakeem Anwar talking about how Above provides their Above book, which is a laptop that's all ready to go with Arch Linux, exactly as I have. As I said to Rob Braxman, I'm on Arch Linux. It's not because I personally install Arch Linux myself. No, I got an Above book from Hakeem, and I use that, and there it is. You're on Linux already. Nothing to do. It's done. So, again, for people who just want the absolute, hey, why can't I just pay someone to do it? Well, it has been done, and it does exist. So good news on that front. All right, that's going to do it. And now here we are at the ultimate lesson edition of Solutions Watch, the final edition of the year. That was a lot of material to go through. Again, I hope people can, with these overviews, if you've made it to the end, hats off to you. Thank you very much for sticking with me. I very much appreciate it. I appreciate it because you are exactly the type of people that I'm hoping to reach with this. People who are genuinely interested in the Solutions Watch material and genuinely looking for ways to improve their lives. Not every Solutions Watch episode is for every person, and some people will find some that they don't like, or they disagree, or doesn't affect them, etc. That's fine. That's all part of this process. Throwing ideas out there and seeing what sticks. And if you're interested in that, boy, have I got much, much more of that coming in the new year. Thank you guys for making it possible. Thank you to all the Corbett Report subscribers and members for your commentary, your feedback, your back and forth, your insights, etc. And obviously also thank you for your monetary support, because this website and everything that I do would not exist without you guys. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to everyone else who just helps with the moral support or spreading the word about this material. Again, you don't have to even share links to the Corbett Report material. You can just share links directly to the guests or their books or whatever it is. I hope that these ideas are useful for you, and I do appreciate the feedback. And I love hearing about how people are applying this knowledge in their life. So share all of that with me that you want over the New Year break. Speaking of which, well, it's time for a New Year break. So yes, as usual, I'll be taking a bit of time off of posting for the next week or two. I will be back, obviously, in the new year, recharged and ready to go with all sorts of material. So I hope you'll be there and prepared and along for the ride. In the meantime, in between time, take your last swig of hot chocolate. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Talk to you again in 2026.